I've been in tech for 25 years. Started at a tech startup. I was their first salesperson. I didn't know much about tech, but I had a little bit of a sales background. They took a chance from there. I built the partnership with Microsoft and then was recruited into Microsoft. I spent 14 years there. I worked in the local district and then moved on to lead nationally and was able to lead globally implementing education technology initiatives. 99% of my role have been newly created roles.
One of the main things for startup success would be go-to-market strategy, right? Because you can have an amazing product, but if you can't get it to market.
And then what does that strategy look like at scale? Latinas are the fastest growing segment of business owners in the United States. It's incredible. Now, the caveat there is that Latinos also receive the least funding.
Instead of trying really hard to fit into a table, they just create their own table and become CEO. If you're starting a tech company, the last thing you should be thinking about is, so Julissa, can you tell us about the beginning of your journey in tech? How did you first get involved in this field and what inspired you to pursue it?
Yes, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I really appreciate the opportunity. And yeah, I've been in tech for 25 years. My career started at a tech startup in actually Newark, New Jersey. And I was their first salesperson, their first sales leader, and then their first director of sales and marketing. That was really my first into the tech industry. Quite frankly, I didn't know much about tech, but I had a little bit of a sales background from selling Ricoh copiers right out of college. They took a chance in me and I did in them. And from there, I built the partnership with Microsoft and then subsequently was recruited into Microsoft. And I spent 14 years there. And from there, I always had a vision for my at Microsoft to be regional in scope, then national, and then global. So that was my career plan. And so I was able to achieve that. I worked in the local New York, New Jersey sales district and then moved on to lead nationally in our ISV and platform businesses, and then joined Microsoft public education and public sector with Microsoft Learning and was able to implement and lead globally implementing education technology initiatives countrywide across Latin America, the US, EMEA, and then in APAC. And then from there, what happens in tech, your friends move around to Google and Salesforce and Facebook and others. I was recruited into Salesforce and worked for the Salesforce Foundation for a couple of years, then left there and to take care of a family member who was ill at the time. I took a couple of years off to focus on that, which I think is very important to also talk about, having a career break, and that's totally okay. And then when I went back, I joined a high growth tech company locally here in New Jersey. And then from there, recruited back to Salesforce and then started my own consulting speaking business. I spent the last year or so writing this book, did a TEDx, and yeah, 25 years goes pretty quickly, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, so I think that was my career in under 30 seconds or something like that.
It sounds like a very fascinating journey. It seems like so you got in from sales and marketing. You would say that so you're mainly on the less technical side of tech, right?
Yes, I'm on the business side of tech. So obviously working with technologists and tech companies, but really on the business side around partnerships, strategic alliances, product management and product development, and bringing those products to market. So go to market strategy and partner operations. So that's where my expertise lies. And so that's where my consulting business really the focus is. I work with consulting firms and with ISVs to develop partner ecosystem, right? And so what is the infrastructure? What does that infrastructure look like to build that ecosystem to help drive revenue through alliances and channels?
Brilliant, because a lot of our listeners are non-technical founders. And I think one of the main things for startup success would be go-to-market strategy, right? Because you can have
Yes.
an amazing product, but if you can't get it to market and if no one's interested in it, then yeah. So do you have any advice for them in terms of go-to-market strategy?
Yes, I think so. There's a lot we can talk about, but I think there's so many ways that we can go with that question. But when I think about go to market strategy, I think about how do you bring your product to market at scale, right? So, what does that look like for the particular product, right? In the particular industry? And then what are the partners that your product can help align with theirs so that you are co-marketing, you are co-branding, you are co-bringing it to market. So who are those strategic alliances that you can partner with? And then what does that strategy look like at scale? So not one-to-one, but a one-to-many model. And then you have to also think about what that infrastructure looks like to support that go to market. So generally it's product development, right? Product marketing, go to market strategy, and then bringing that to market. And then what does that support methodology look like from all organizations, all companies? So it's a lot to think about, but I think companies like obviously Microsoft, they have one of the largest partner ecosystems and in the hundreds of thousands. Salesforce, who have partner ecosystem in the thousands. There's lessons to learn from other organizations who are bringing that product to market at scale.
Definitely. So you discovered Salesforce in 2014 and has had an impressive career there. So what initially drew you to Salesforce and what kept you engaged with the company over the years?
Yeah, Salesforce has a brilliant culture. I think unique in tech. So that drew me. But the other thing that drew me is a lot of my peers and a lot of my contacts were moving to Salesforce. That was really a draw for me because it's where your network goes, you go too, right? And so I was recruited in because of my expertise, but also my contacts were there. My network was there. So I was able to leverage my network to join and to grow there, but also make even more contacts and build my network there as well. So that was one of the biggest draw. But then the culture really became significant, I think, and that certainly keeps a lot of people there for sure.
So can you tell us more about the culture at Salesforce?
Yes, I think it's a really dynamic culture in terms of growth for employees, in terms of belonging. I went back in 2019, 2000 and joined back. And one of the reasons that I did is because of some of their ERGs and affinity groups. And one, which was they were really promoting on LinkedIn, was Faith Force, and I'm a woman of faith. And I felt, wow, this is unique, right? The embracing of all aspects of the employees. And so that really drew me to take a second look at Salesforce when I was being recruited. This is something that's interesting and fascinating. And I reached out to the executive sponsor of the Faith Force ERG, and we became great friends, right? Someone of a different faith than me, but bringing those intersectionalities together and really bringing awareness of our full selves into the workforce really was important to me.
So what are some ways to bring your faith into the workforce, like in a practical level?
Yeah, I don't think it not necessarily that I would talk about my faith necessarily in day to day, but it's certainly, for instance, I'm not talking about my gender day to day or my ethnic background day to day, but it's the idea of belonging and it's the idea of not hiding really who you are, right? And so, not necessarily that I'm bringing it into work, but it's this acknowledgement that we are bringing our full selves there, and that I think brings a lot of psychological safety to many, not just me, but I think to many for
Yeah,
sure.
definitely. I really do agree. Be able to bring your own authenticity into the workforce. I feel like it can increase productivity as well because when you're your best self, you can perform better.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. If you're taking the layers off a bit and are allowed to just be who you are. And so if you're able to do that, then your impact is even greater because you're not worried about all those other things.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, founding Jamosan Education Advisors is such a commendable initiative. So, what inspired you to create this advisory firm, and how do you see it impacting young people, especially those from underrepresented backgrounds?
Yes, I mentioned that I took a couple of years off to take care of a family member. And while I was doing that, I just realized I needed to do something else as well. And I wanted to start business. And so I really wanted to help. I was just getting a lot of outreach from others who are interested in careers in tech. And outreach from others that were interested in mentoring and wanting to help them with their career, right? And whether it was applying for a job or making connections. And so I thought, okay, I can monetize this, right? I can bring my advisory services and create a business around it. And so what started to occur is that parents who are well educated, however, are not used to the US educational system of applying to universities and colleges, they wanted to come to me to seek my expertise. And then, young adults in their 20s and early career adults in their 20s and early 30s were also coming to me. So I was able to leverage my expertise and help those families, help those students, and then also help those early career individuals. It was, yeah, it was a way to, how do I take care of my family member, but also feel like I'm doing something in my career that's also bringing revenue to the home and creating something for myself.
Definitely. I think you touched on a really important point there. I feel like so you started your company based on feedback, right? So it was the
Yes.
feedback first and then the company, which I feel like a lot of people get that wrong. They do the company and then they get feedback. And I feel like this is an important point.
Yeah. Thank you for pointing that out. I didn't even, sometimes you don't even realize, but that is, I think, really important feedback because a lot of things, especially I have my new business, Methodical, the consulting business, and also writing under that business, speaking under that, it also came from feedback. And so many times it's interesting, we give away our advisory services when we really can monetize that. And it's a good, what is the market asking you for? What's the need in the market that you can uniquely fulfill? Yeah, I think that's great that you pointed that out.
Yeah, definitely. Another thing that you spoke about is in terms of being able to help young people. Is there anyone in specific that you've given advice to and you've mentored that you feel particularly proud of?
I have to tell you, there's so many people, and they're not necessarily all young, but that I've been able to be a part of their lives and mentor over the years, particularly with the scholarship that I created at Rutgers University. I created a scholarship called the Latina Leadership Potential Award. It will be 20 years next year. So I created it when I was a young professional starting out in tech. And I created it because I wanted to help someone that looked like me, right? Because at the time, I was really first generation immigrants trying to pay my way through a very expensive higher education system, right? Really just a lot of money. And in many ways, I felt like I was like robbing Peter to pay Paul, right? Okay, I've got to pay for this and I'll put this on my credit card. It was just, you just make it happen. And so through that scholarship that I established, I've been able to meet many women, many Latinas who have done incredible things in their careers. And I've been able to mentor them, help them throughout their journeys. Some are leaders at Accenture. Some are Columbia Law School graduates and are attorneys now. Some are leading educational systems as state superintendents and others are PhDs and college professors. So it's been a really great journey in tech as well. I just met with a mentee of mine over the weekend and we were able to strategize a really difficult work situation. and be able to provide some insight and advice, but also validate that, man, she's handling this incredibly well. I'm so proud of her. But also take a step back and be strategic in what's happening and understanding kind of the power plays that are happening and how that is absolutely normal, right? In a competitive work situation. I've had the pleasure to really be a part of a lot of people's lives and also men and all genders as well. So very thankful for that.
Yeah, I think it's very awesome that you're able to bring out your passion of wanting to help people and monetizing that as well. I think that's definitely the dream for many listeners here.
Yes, for sure. Sure.
So you've been very active in mentorship, particularly supporting Hispanic women. Can you share some, perhaps some other stories or experiences that your mentorship has made it particularly rewarding?
What's interesting is that I really do believe mentorship is a two-way street, right?
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example. For my book, when I wrote this book, I really had my mentees in mind. And I was able to really get feedback from them. I asked them, hey, so like I interviewed a number of Latinos and Latinx and Latin individuals just to understand what are some of the things that are near and dear to their hearts, right? Not just career, but in life in general. And I learned so much. So many are concerned about what their career will look like when they have a family. What will that look like for them? Some are wanting a family. Some are concerned about student loan debts as they grow in their career. Some are concerned about their families and sort of their ambition, but also taking care of their parents and what that would look like. And so I was able to also get feedback from them on the book cover, on telling them, hey, I'm gonna write about money this in this book. What do you think about that? In many ways, I was able, we talked about mentorship in just a couple of minutes ago and what I was able to just provide. But I really think that it's just a relationship, it's a friendship. And I may be able to give some key tools and strategies and tactics to help them in their careers, but also I'm learning from them as well so that I'm able to really speak to just a broader because the book is called Latina Madrina, right? And a madrina is a godmother. And a godmother is appointed by your parents, right, throughout your life. And they're there for you as you grow up and they're giving you guidance. But it's a relationship. It's not just about here. I just believe in wellness, right? And empowering yourself and representation. It's about all of that because we're not just one thing, right? We're not just our careers, we're human. And that's
Definitely.
I take.
I completely agree. We're not just our career. I feel like a lot of people they attach their values to their career. So if they lose their job or they lose something in specific, everything falls apart. But I feel like we need to attach ourselves to values that are internal so that we can
Yeah.
get back up whenever we need to.
Yes. I'm so glad that you mentioned that because we do identify so much with our careers. And in many ways, it brings us so much joy, right? A sense of accomplishment, a sense of getting things done, drive and ambition. I think all of those are wonderful, things. But there is a balance that we need to strike in terms of what really do we value. And then the key areas in our lives, we really look at that compared to our values. So I think it's important that we do that self reflection, not let our careers be the end all and be all.
Definitely. So returning to Salesforce as the director of partner ecosystems development is a significant role. What challenges and opportunities have you encountered in this position?
Yeah, I think that role it's really interesting because, it was a new team, new role, new remits, right? New mandates. And there were significant challenges, but I think some opportunities as well. One of the things that I really love is taking something new and building a team and a structure around a remit that's never been created. That's like the go-to for me in my entire career. I was always the one, okay, we've never done this before. We're building a new team. We're thinking of this idea. Do you want to tackle it? And I'm like, yeah, that is so me. And so in almost in every single position, I think I would say 99% of my roles have been newly created roles. So for me, I love that and I thrive in that environment because for me, I think that builds the most creativity and you're able to build a team that's really innovative, right? They think in an innovative way. Like, what are the platforms, the infrastructure that's needed to drive some of these programs at scale for our partner ecosystem in North America? So I think one of the significant things was really leveraging the tools that were already there to give us insight into what we need to build for the future. And from a sort of ecosystem readiness standpoint, like how do we pull that data and then create a new infrastructure around how to execute on some of the important challenges that we were seeing in the ecosystem? How do we prepare the ecosystem, but also how do we build the infrastructure to move forward? One of the things that I'm really proud of is the team that I led. Because of that, sort of building something new, a lot of creativities, a lot of innovation. And I allowed the team, like, hey, bring your best, input and ideas to the table and let's do this together. And so we were able to tackle that as a team. So I'm really proud of that. Yes, a lot of challenges, but we embrace the challenges and then we bring solutions to bear and just turn those challenges into opportunities.
I love that. And yeah, I think one of the key words that stood out for me here is uncertainty. I feel like you really thrive in uncertain environments. What advice do you have for people who are in the tech space, but they do struggle with uncertainty?
You bring up that word, and it's really funny because I didn't really think about that, but I think you're right. I really think it's uncertainty, but I think I look at it as an opportunity to solve problems and create new initiatives. So it's really about having the ability to take a step back and view the organization from a further lens to look at where the opportunities are. Like, what are the levers? And I think about this sort of in a crawl, walk, run. What are the levers that we can pull today to make an impact? And then what are the things that in the walking stage, right? Once we've crawled in the walking stage that we can plan for? And then what does it look like to be at the run stage? It's more about looking for opportunities to solve problems and have an impact, but doing it in a methodical way, right? Because we can't solve, let's say, 10 issues that you've identified, right, in the organization to drive change, but you can tackle 3 to 5 at each stage and at each step. And then, so that's how I view uncertainty. I view it as an opportunity. And I think it takes a certain personality type to do that.
Definitely. So your advice would be to take a step back and then see what is there and use that as opportunities.
But yes, and then the other advice I would take is I think it's really important to socialize and to get feedback from others as you're building your solution. So you're not doing this in a silo, you're not doing this on your own. You're building alliances and partnerships with your stakeholders to help solve the. So I think that kind of helps with uncertainty too. You may have identified a problem, but tease it a little bit more with your stakeholder to get more insight and data so that you're working in partnership and not in a silo for sure.
Definitely. So having partnerships and working with other people helps with this problem.
Particularly your stakeholders that you're trying to solve a problems for. Yeah, for sure.
Definitely. So balancing a demanding career in tech with personal interests can be challenging. How do you find a balance and what role does gardening play in your life?
Yes. Thank you for mentioning gardening. Such a great hobby. I actually, and you're right, it is always difficult to balance, right? All the things that are in our lives and responsible for. So I love gardening plants. For me, it's a way to, because I'm in my head a lot, right, and doing things and thinking a lot, it's an opportunity for me to get my hands dirty and to take care of plants. I have over 60 plants inside my home and a garden outside. So they require a lot of care. And it just brings me a lot of joy and a lot of peace to do that. And I love seeing things grow. It makes me happy for sure.
Yeah, I think I definitely see the correlation between your hobbies and what you do in work as well, and seeing things grow. I think I've had other founders also who are into gardening, and it seems like very symbolic of building a business and having the patience to keep something alive because it's actually quite hard to keep a plant alive.
Didn't realize that this is like a founder's, this is our sort of zen. This is how we like take a break and in between con calls, that's what, in between con calls, I get up, I go to my plant studio and I look at my plants and I take care of them and all that. But I think there is a correlation about growing a business, growing a team, and being responsible for growing plants because it does require patience, right? They're not going to, depending on the plant, some grow faster than others, but many take a long time, particularly if you're propagating and you're looking for those roots to grow, right? To establish themselves. I think you've got something. Maybe, I don't know, maybe we can create an organization, founders and plant growers or something.
Why not? So, looking back, what were some of the toughest hurdles that you've had to overcome in your career, and how did you navigate these challenges?
Yes. So I think it's been a long career and every stage brings its issues, right? And I think initially one of the things I started at a tech startup. And so there were 50 employees. I worked directly for the CEO. I understood the organization and my drive and ambition really got me a lot of success very early on. I went there to Microsoft, multi-billion dollar organization. I don't remember if it was 50 to or 75,000 employees at the time or maybe about, yeah, around there. It's going from startup to a large tech organization it was really eye opening. And even though built a really incredible network, I think I needed to understand and to learn how to navigate such a large tech organization. And so as I grew in my career and as I grew, I think that was the biggest hurdle very early on. And then navigating change because a lot of people think that a large tech organization, you've got, you know, budgets that you can just play around with. You've got teams and resources. It's not always the case, right? So how do you like pull those levers and work with people so that they can help you drive your initiatives for your team, for your organization? So having that social capital and building that social capital, I had to learn. I had to bring my own skills. And so that was definitely, one of the things that I had to really get better and better at. And then also influencing without authority. Like, how do you get stakeholders to buy into your ideas and so that you're able to get buy-in and execute and not necessarily approval, but and teams and people and all of that. So navigating large organizations, that is something that I had to really, it was a hurdle that I needed to get over. And it's still something that I think everybody has to work on that all the time. And then as I moved into leadership roles, it was really about moving away from being the doer to the leader and the strategist, moving away from controlling the outcome to coaching, mentoring, and leading and driving a team. So those are things I think at each stage I had to learn and to overcome. And then I think lastly, what I'll say, understanding that while there are many things in our careers that we are in control of, there are many things. There are also many things that are outside of our control. And then how do we balance that? How do we balance? I'll give you for instance, right? So market dynamics, right? The financial, crash of 2007 and 2008. That is not something that we can control, but it impacts the business and it impacted our business at Microsoft. What's happening now in global markets, in the war in Ukraine, the election, there are things that occur that impact our business that are outside of our control. But what can we do within our control? So I had to really learn to be mindful of that and also do the and focus on what was in my control versus what was out and move forward in that way.
Yeah, definitely. I think you touched on an important point, focusing on the things you can control and also people skills in big organizations. It seems like really difficult to navigate these large organizations as opposed to a smaller startup.
So from a people perspective and building that social capital, it's really important and understanding that everyone has their own agenda, right? And their own projects that they're bringing forward and that they're driving. So there may not always be alignment and that is perfectly okay, but keep looking for the stakeholders that will support you and support your.
So mainly it look for people who have aligned interests.
Yes, aligned interests, as well as obviously people who can mentor you and sponsor you throughout, for sure, making sure you have that.
So your new book, Latina Madrina, Stories, Lessons, and Hard Truths from a Brown Latina in Tech, sounds really fascinating. What motivated you to write this book, and what key messages do you hope the readers will take away with it?
I wanted to write this book when I realized that it's weird. I didn't realize I had such a long career in tech. It's not like I was counting the years, but my first mentor at Microsoft, she announced on LinkedIn that she has been in tech for 25 years. And I thought, oh, let me count. And so I started counting. And I'm like, gosh, in a couple of years, that will be where I'm at. And I started thinking about all the things that I've learned and all of the lessons that I've gained over the years. And the fact that only 2% of Latinas are in leadership roles in corporates and only 1% are in the C-suite. And in my career tech, I just was always either the only woman, the only Latina, the only multiracial person, the only brown person in the room. I never really thought much about it, quite frankly. I just was like, I'm just me trying to do a job. But I would inevitably, the reaction from others made me understand that I was different, right? That I was not like the response from others because there weren't enough. And that's when I started thinking about what are some of the things that I would love to share with others who are aspiring leaders of Latinas and other marginalized brown people, right? And what would that look like? So I wrote it because one, I think I was just really in a place where I was really grateful for my career and all the things that I've achieved and all the people that have been in my life. And there's so few stories and so few sort of real stories. Like it's called hard truths for a reason, right? I don't want to sugarcoat some of the really hard things because while I've had, I think, a great career, it's been hard in many ways. And this was not easy all the time. And I felt like others were just, no, it just always sounded so easy. I'm like, it can't be that easy because it's not easy for me. So I just wanted to share some of the realities, right? Some of the things that because I didn't want others that look like me, Latinas, who aspire to be leaders, to be surprised. I feel like so many times in my career, I was just surprised. Like, why is this person coming at me in this presentation? They have their own agenda, their own point of view. And so how can I work in that environment? How do I succeed? How do I negotiate and influence to not be surprised and taken aback by some of the things that occur in corporate? I wrote it for the women that I mentor. I had them in mind as I was writing. And I think some of the hard truths that you asked about are around the system was not really made for us, right? The system where we get our identity, where we make money, right? Our financial stability comes from these careers. We provide for our families and for ourselves. Was not built for us. And so knowing that, how do we navigate and win, compete to win in this kind of institutions that were built that were not built for us? Another sort of hard truth is you will have more horrible bosses than great ones. So how can you be the leader that you wish that you have always had? Now, mind you, you will have some good bosses. And so how do you learn from the bad bosses and how do you navigate towards the leaders that you really want to work with? So those kind of hard truths, I think it's important to know and to navigate, right? So that people are not surprised. And so those are just some examples of things that I covered. I also talk about microaggressions and how to handle those and feeling unsure about your abilities. We call it imposter syndrome. I'm on the fence with that term, imposter syndrome, because I'm like, it's just insecurity. Anyway, yeah. So I talk about all those things. And I think that this thing for me in writing this is that I didn't want others to feel alone in their journey. It's like, I've been there, I get it, and I don't want you to feel alone.
Yeah, I really like the reason you wrote the book and how you decided to focus on the hard truth. Because I think a lot of people, they look at people like you and they're like, oh my God, wow, like she's so positive. This must have been so easy because she makes it sound really easy. But the fact that you come out and you really show the real journey and how to navigate it, I think will be incredibly useful for aspiring leaders.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that because that's exactly why I wrote it. I don't want people to think that this has been easy. I would hear other leaders and I'm like, could not have been that easy. And I think it's our responsibility to prepare, right? The next generation. I feel a very strong sense of responsibility to help to provide the tools and to also share some things that were hard for me. It was not easy in many ways, but in many ways, I've had a lot of fun. I built an incredible network. People are so excited about this book. People are coming out of the woodwork, people that I haven't worked with in 10, 15, 20 years, excited. That is what a career will bring to you, support and a network. But in the day to day, months to months, year to year, there's highs, there's lows, there's failures, there's successes. It's all in there.
Yeah, I feel like it's been quite a journey for you. And my friend actually told me once that she was like, this is what the older generation is supposed to do for us, right? What they're supposed to do is pass on to the next generation. And I feel like you're doing just that, which is what everyone in my generation would love your generation to do.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So, as someone who has dedicated a lot of time to promoting diversity in tech, what changes have you seen over the years, and what more do you think needs to be done?
For for Latinos, and I think the latest data says that of the only 7% of Latinos are in the tech industry. And so it's a very small number. And I think it's grown by maybe 1 percentage point. And so from the last data set, there's so much that needs to be done within corporate to bring just diversity, right, to the tech industry, not just in or in the corporate spaces altogether. But what I have seen, which is so for me encouraging and uplifting, is that Latinos and people of color, they are now creating businesses, like tech businesses. They're building their own businesses and creating their own thing. And that, I believe, is a direct response for the lack of career growth that is happening in corporate and in tech. And people are saying, we're going to build our own futures. And so Latinas are the fastest growing segment of business owners in the United States. It's incredible. Now, the caveat there is that Latinos also receive the least funding, investment funding, so of all racial and ethnic and gender groups. There's a disparity there, but I believe that being a creator of technology, particularly what's happening now, the explosion of AI, that is really the future. And it's a direct response to especially careers that potentially are not happening in the corporate space. So there's a lot that can be done, but I think we're doing so. For me, I had a goal to be COO. I wanted to be in the C suite. That was taking longer. And I'm like, you know what? I'm creating my own thing. And now I'm the CEO. And so that's something that we can just take on ourselves and on our own, and we're making it happen for ourselves. So for me, I think that's what I'm seeing.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm seeing the tech space going as well. Because I feel like the people who aren't able to succeed in this kind of corporate space because they feel like the space isn't really for them, and it's so they're just come out. So instead of trying really hard to fit into a table, they just create their own table and become CEO, which is something I really love seeing.
Yes. The innovation is there, right? And the drive to build something for themselves is there. And that is happening in financial numbers and growth. So it's great to see.
Yeah, and we live in a good time for that as well with AI and all these tools out there that makes us able to do things a lot faster.
Agree for sure. I'm glad
Lastly,
to
what
hear. Yeah,
sorry?
I'm glad to hear that you're seeing it too. And you're halfway around the world. You're seeing it too. This is
Well,
great.
yeah, that's the beauty of the internet, right? I feel like we're so connected now and
Yes.
everything's happening in a similar way, even though we're in different contexts.
Yes, for sure. For sure.
Lastly, what advice would you give to non-technical founders who want to leverage technology for their businesses? Any tips on where they should start and how can they stay updated with the latest tech trends?
Yes. One of the things that I think about is I always think about in people, processes, and then technology. And so if you're starting to build a business today, who does what, right? So before you start throwing tech into the mix of your business to run your business and build an infrastructure, understand what your team will do, what the people will do. Then equally important, what are your processes? Because if you've got broken systems or haven't thought through the structure of your process, meaning what is your customer acquisition strategy? What is your customer support strategy? Do you need that? Are you building a consulting business? And so there may be less overhead because you're leveraging your expertise. So think about what the team will do. Think about what the processes and the systems will look like. Then the tech will solve some of the issues. Right now, there's also so much tech. We were talking about AI systems, SaaS, et cetera, that you can actually, a lot of that you can actually acquire very quickly. And then the other thing I think about is how to stay up to date. For me, I'm always learning, especially with AI now. I have an AI mentor, a very good friend in my network who is a leader in AI. And so I think we're all keeping abreast of all the new technologies. I follow some of the key leaders on YouTube and learn there and some of the industry trends. Keeping up is sort of fast paced, but I think it's important to keep up with some of the business tools, especially the tools that you're going to use to support your customers. I think that's important to do.
Definitely. Yeah, I feel like you've given a lot of great advice for everyone today. And I feel like this is such a good point to close up on. If you're starting a tech company, the last thing you should be thinking about is technology. You should
Yeah,
first think about people, processes, and systems. which I feel like a lot of people have it the other way around, but it's very good to know this.
It's one methodology, right? And it's just something that I think about. Every business is different, so you've got to look at what the needs are within the organization. It's just something that is to keep in mind, that type of framework.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Julissa, today for sharing all of your insights. And I'm sure everyone's very excited to read your book.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course.